What's up, y'all? Sparta here. I'm going to be doing a 5 days in video right now of the, sorry you can't really see it, Xiaomi 13 Ultra, this beauty right here. Now, gonna talk about a couple of my likes, my gripes, and pretty much what I am feeling so far, obviously, about this pretty crazy phone. It's pretty crazy. Shooting this on the Pixel 7a, people were asking me what the phone I was using for the last video to record was, and it was indeed this phone. Yeah, this phone does a very good job. Anybody telling you that Pixels don't know how to record video, I don't know how they come to that conclusion, because I feel like this phone does a very good job, especially for just like a full auto mode. Like 4K 60, sure, it's not on along both sensors, but whatever. It's not really that big of a deal, honestly, because the main sensor does it so well. But yeah, let's get to this here. So in terms of everything that has to do with this being a phone, I'm gonna get a lot of this out of the way right now. Obviously, this is a phone that was meant for the Chinese market, so some things just aren't going to work. Due to the fact that I did get this through a reseller and they loaded up the global version, global ROM, it's unlocked. The bootloader's unlocked. So one gripe I have is that I can't use Google Pay. Now, that has nothing really to do with the phone itself, obviously. That has to do with Google and how they handle things like unlocked bootloaders when it comes to allowing you to use Google Pay. It's stupid. I wish Google would just allow me to use it, but regardless, it isn't like I don't have my Pixel 7a or my cards on me, the cards that I actually use on me anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But it would have been something very nice to basically make this my single-use phone, and that's what basically hampers it right there. I don't get 5G, I only get LTE. Honestly, I don't really care. It honestly, saves battery life. And for me, what I ended up doing is that out of the box, it does ask you, while the phone is focusing on the leaves, it does ask you, you can't go into here, not there, where is it at? Preferred network type. You could go into the preferred network type. Let me just grab it up here so you guys can see it. And you can see that it's asking, do you prefer 5G or do you want to go to these other networks? And I just went to prefer LTE, because if you do it to prefer 5G, it will end up, it does seem to still eat up a little bit more battery. Not much, but it's something that I've noticed. And since I went down to prefer LTE, battery life has been better. And to me, that's actually very nice. Let's talk about the overall like calls and stuff like that. I haven't really received that many calls, so I can't really talk about it all that much. But so far, for the calls that I have had, it's been good. There haven't been phones within the past like 10 years that I've really had any sort of issues with phone calls. With Bluetooth connectivity, whenever I use my LG Tone FP9s or my free fits, neither of them have any sort of issues whatsoever, so that's not really a big deal. And honestly, a lot of the times it does seem that the phone does a better job at sticking to keeping things connected compared to, say, my Pixel 7a or even my Xperia 1 Mark III. V60 especially, since that has an older Bluetooth connection. I think it's 5.1 on there, so there are a couple of issues there. So I'm not obviously there are going to be issues when it comes to that, but due to the fact that I think this uses Bluetooth 5.4, I really don't have any sort of issues with either of my Bluetooth headphones connecting and staying connecting or dropping out or sounding weird or anything like that, unless I do use multi-point connection on the tone-free fits, and swapping does do a little bit of wonky things, but that just so happens to be what happens when you use earbuds with multi-point connectivity, in my personal experience. Sometimes the volume will lower on one and just stay at that volume and all this extra stuff. So I'm not really gonna say that's the phone's fault. That's just how multi-point ends up being for me personally. Yeah, so I guess I'll just run down the specs here real quick. You got the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, 16 gigs of RAM with the 512 gigabyte version of this phone, which is what I have. It goes all the way up to 1 terabyte, which also is a 16 gig of RAM version. Goes down to 256, which has 12 gigs of RAM. 12 gigs of RAM personally is enough in my personal opinion, but I went with the 512 gig 16 gig variant mainly for the storage, because obviously you don't get an SD card expansion option with this phone at all. Xiaomi, for the love of God, you gave us USB 3 with display out. With the 14 Ultra, if you're gonna be doing this, God tier camera experience on the phone, give me SD card expansion, and please make it to where I can mount the SD card as internal storage. That would be very nice as well, because it makes no sense to have these sensors on this phone, these amazing sensors on this phone, where I want to take a bunch of pictures, and I don't even know how many pictures I've taken. But I'll get into that here real quick and see. I've taken 387 photos so far. To me, that is something that is, and a lot of them are just bull shots, like just test shots to see how things look and whatnot. But in terms of the quality shots, I've taken a lot of quality shots. I've taken 50 megapixel shots. I've taken raw shots. I've taken ultra raw shots. I haven't taken video yet. But in terms of what this phone has to offer, to me, it doesn't make sense for you to not have SD card expansion in this phone, especially at the price point that it comes at. That's the singular gripe. But you have 512 gigabytes of internal storage. You have a 1 terabyte option, so I guess it's not really that big of a deal. But for me personally, I would definitely like to see with the 14 Ultra, or even the 14 series in general, for you guys to give SD card expansion and allow people to mount the SD card as internal storage. Because I've only seen that on a couple of phones. Xperia's can do it depending on how efficient and how fast and how quality the SD card is. And cheap Moto phones can also do it too. So it would honestly be nice to have that on this higher tier of phone. But yeah, other than the storage and whatnot, the performance is fantastic. The storage options you get are fantastic. I just really wish they would have that. The display is a 6.8 inch 1440p OLED panel. I do believe it's LTPO. I don't really know, and honestly, I don't really care. I've had very wonky experiences with LTPO panels. There are people that say, oh, LTPO helps with things like battery life, but then I've had things like the S21 Ultra around the same time I had the Xperia 1 Mark III, and the Xperia 1 Mark III, despite having a static 120 hertz panel, still ekes out just as good battery life despite it also having a higher resolution display. So to me, LTPO kind of, to me, is snake oil. It's just one of those marketing speak things to me that just don't really matter. Doesn't really matter. And yeah, but overall, this isn't a set. I forget what the maker of the screen is, but Xiaomi partnered with some Chinese screen brand, and they made this panel for this phone, and I think it goes up to either 25 or 2600 nits, and obviously you won't get that by doing a manual slider, but I will tell you guys this. For the moments that you do get to see it in bright sunlight like this, like you see this sun right here, you see that sunlight? This phone's display gets very bright. It's only for a little bit. It kind of works like the LG G7 when you can manually toggle the actual max brightness mode, and it would only do it for like a couple of minutes. It kind of works that way, but it obviously doesn't give you a manual toggle. It does it automatically, and it looks very nice. It's very bright. I don't really have any sort of issues with seeing the display in sunlight, so for me personally, I do feel like this display does a really good job. 120 hertz, 240 hertz touch sampling rate. This is the second phone that feels fantastic gaming with. Like, the other one is the One Mark III. Phones like the phones that I've had, like S21 Ultra, iPhone 13 Pro, and other phones that claim to be great for gaming but feel like shit during gaming because the touch sampling rate on the display is shit. That's not a problem with this. It feels as good, if not better, than the One Mark III, solely because it's also using a more efficient chipset. The heat dissipation, obviously this has thermal cooling inside the phone as well, but the 8 Gen 2 also being more efficient brings this up to a higher tier. And I do feel like the only real reason why I don't game on this phone more is because of this big ass camera bump. You know, and the moment that I get the case that I'm getting to cover the camera overall, it's just going to be harder to actually game on it. But until then, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess you could say. But gaming on this phone is also fantastic, and I really don't have any sort of issues with it whatsoever. Playing Call of Duty Mobile, you go down to medium settings and you turn up the frame rate all the way up. You can get 120 hertz, and it honestly feels like you're cheating on everybody, like cheating over everybody else, and it's really crazy. But yeah, what I want to get into now, I guess the specs of the cameras. You got a 32 megapixel front-facing camera up there. I don't really give a fuck about that thing. I don't use it. I'm never going to use it. It could only go up to 1080p. Let me look. I think it's only 1080p 60, which is nice. I think 1080p 60 is fine, and if you really need to, you could upscale it. I think the video, as you guys can't really see it all that well, it looks decent. It looks a little bit over sharpened, but that's kind of par for the course with things like this. But yeah, that's something I don't really care about, and I don't really I don't use the selfie camera. If this phone didn't have a selfie camera, I'd be totally fine with it. But it has one, and whatever. So you have 4 sensors on the back of this phone. You have the begrudge doing this. You have the IMX 989, which is the top left. You have the other 3 sensors, which are the same IMX 800 series camera sensors. They're very high quality. All 4 of these are 50 megapixels. You have your ultra wide in the upper right. You have your, I think it's 3.2x sensor in the lower left, and you have your 5.3 or just 5. You have your 5x sensor in the lower right, which is your, periscoping zoom telephoto. And these sensors are fantastic. I'm not really going to beat around the bush about that at all. I've got to test the companion sensors a little bit more, but the little bit that I've been doing, I think Xiaomi made the best possible choice in picking the same sensors for the 3 companion sensors and making sure that their aperture and all matches just well enough to where you can't really distinguish the difference between the background blur and whatnot on the between them and the main sensor. The main sensor is a 1-inch type sensor. It's a made for mobile 1-inch type sensor. It's the first of its kind. Sony did, with the Sony Xperia Pro I, use the RX 100 Mark 5 or 7 sensor, which is a 1-inch sensor, but obviously that's made for dedicated cameras. And they cropped it in to have the, sensor size be more akin to like an S21 Ultra, I believe. So that's something that's like, it's not while physically it is a 1-inch sensor, you're not outputting at the same kind of, insane, you're not outputting in the same, way. It's not outputting the pictures in the same way, really. You kind of have the same like background blur and bokeh that you would get from those phones, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. This also had the 1-inch type sensor, also has a variable aperture. It's the base aperture is f1.9 and it can go to f4, and I'll try my best to show you guys this on camera here. So go here, and this is so difficult. I'm sorry. Hold on. So yeah, this is like, this ain't gonna happen. I'll probably just splice it. I'll probably just end up splicing it later in the video if I can get it to work. But I mean, I could just not do it in the pro mode. So am I hitting it? The problem is, right, this phone doesn't respond to taps from your fingernail, so it's kind of difficult for this to do. Most phones actually will just take your fingernail, but hold on a second, let me try and, yeah, you see that? I don't want grid lines, damn it. No. Oh, god damn it. Now I gotta figure out to turn this off. But yeah, made it go to F4. I'm gonna make it go back to F9. As you guys can see right there, it physically switches the aperture. And give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Obviously, I gotta do this with one hand, so it's kind of difficult to show you guys exactly how to do this without carefully do it so I don't drop the damn phone. But yeah, it's very nice to have that. And people are like, why would you want that? Why not just shoot at the, the base aperture all the time? Sometimes you want to be able to make sure that you get everything in the scene properly exposed. And some things at f1.9 can end up being a little, especially on the main subject, can end up getting blurred out a little bit. Like, it's not terrible. The focus fall off is something that you'll really have to get used to. And I do really like that they give you that control. So to me, that's something that a lot more manufacturers need to, especially if you're going to have this like tier of phone and you're going to make this tier of phone. I really do feel like more phones should have a variable aperture. We haven't really seen it since the S9 Plus and the S9, the Galaxies. And then Sony did it with the Xperia Pro I. But for a phone with this large of a sensor, it really gives you control over the camera in a way that a lot of most phones don't allow you to. My bad, the damn phone ran out of space. But that just goes to show, Google, don't just have a 128 gigabyte version of the Pixel 8a next year. That's stupid. 128 gig is measly now. Like, you can only install a few games and record a few videos off of it. And with how good this phone does with video, to me, it sucks that they limit you with just 128 gigs on this phone. But this isn't a review of the Pixel 7a. I've already done that. But yeah, like I was saying, I don't remember where I left off. They did a very good job of making sure that with using these higher quality sensors, these basically, because the sensors that these three are the same that were, I believe, the main sensor in like a OnePlus 9 Pro. And to me, that's crazy. That's crazy that you can get that kind of quality out of this. All four shoot at 4K 60. All four in the Pro mode allow you to shoot 50 megapixel stills, and in RAW, so that's very nice. There's a lot of great things that this phone does, and these cameras do. There are a lot of finicky parts. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. You can't do 4K 120, which is something that I kind of expect because, you know, this is such a new sensor. Only 7 phones have it. Like, they've only really been oh shit, sorry. They've only really been utilized the later part of 2022 into this year, the IMX989. So it's a newer sensor, and Sony is most likely going to try and make it to where they get priority on the 4K 120 version of this sensor, or a newer 1-inch sensor with 4K 120 capabilities. And you might say, oh, 4K 120, who really cares? I care. I think 4K 120 is a very nice option, and it doesn't do anything to take away from, you know, the overall look and feel of the video. And to me, I really do feel like it would be nice. It would have been nice to have it on here. Now, obviously, it's not that big of a deal. I haven't recorded video on this phone yet, but in the Pro mode, it does record in Dolby Vision 4K 60. And it's nice. I will do a separate video on that and talk about how I overall feel about it. But yeah. What else? What else is there? I guess I could just talk about accessories and all the extra stuff too. So it came with this bumper case in the box, aside from the little Leica sticker I have on there. I got that from AliExpress back when I was trying to get the 12S Ultra. But regardless, I was able to repurpose it for the 13 Ultra, and that's very nice. It's a very decent case, a little grip case. I do feel like, though, and give me 1 second, I do feel like the actual back of the phone has more grip, though. And that's kind of a problem with this case for me. And at work, I tend to take the case off because how grippy the back is itself is like, it's crazy, and it actually feels very nice. I know it's faux leather, pleather, whatever the hell you want to call it, vegan leather, and all that extra shit. But to me, this feels very good. And where the camera is, the metal around there basically raises up from the frame of the phone, and how the back like gets inset into the frame of the phone as well reminds me of the LG V10. I don't know what it is about it, but it really reminds me of the V10, especially the flat sides and all this other stuff. It's actually very nice, and I actually really love how this phone feels in the hand. I don't talk about that much because it's kind of a moot point. Most phones feel good to hold, but there's something about having a phone that's not yet another phone with a glass back that you have to put a case on. That just feels very nice. It just feels to me this feels far more premium than glass, and you still get things like wireless charging, get 50-watt wireless charging. This phone charges faster wirelessly than iPhones and Galaxies and Pixels charge wired. That's crazy. And you get a 90-watt charger in the box. I'm not sure if you can get the 120-watt Xiaomi charger and then charge it at 120 watts. I don't see why you couldn't, other than the fact that they just made it to the phone won't support it, but I don't see why they would do that. It doesn't make any sense to me that the Xiaomi 13 Pro supports 120 watt fast charging, but the 13 Ultra doesn't. To me, that would be kind of weird, but people have probably looked into this and tested it. I'm not sure, but 90 watts at least does a very good job at making sure that the phone tops off in around like 30 to 40 minutes. And to me, that's a very good amount of time. Say you put this on the charger at like 50%, your phone will be charged in roughly like 15 to 20 minutes. And to me, that's very nice. I've had it happen a couple times where I wake up a little bit late for work, so then I put it on the charger for like 15-20 minutes, and then I have the phone's at 100 or at least at 98 or something like that, and then I'm totally fine. Speaking of battery life, I think the battery life has been very good. I can typically get 8 to 9 hours of screen on time out of this phone, which is very nice. Which is very typical of a flagship these days. Pretty much gone are the days of having a high performance phone that you could also get like 15 hours of screen on time out of, right? I think that's pretty much a dead dream. The V60 was kind of the last hurrah of that, and also like a 13 Pro Max, which got like an hour or two less than that. But honestly, 8 to 9 hours of screen on time with a phone that charges as fast as this does, I think that's fine. I think that's totally serviceable, and I don't really have any sort of issue with this charge rate of how this phone charges and whatnot. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. I haven't slept yet, but yeah. I will talk about things like night mode photography and all that other stuff in a separate video, because I want to compare it to the Pixel 7a. I know the Pixel 7a doesn't have the same sensor. It's technically it's the cheapest phone in Google's lineup or whatever, but Google constantly gets the praise of they have the best night mode in the game, right? So I want to show you guys what you do when you pair a large sensor like this with a night mode. It's actually very crazy. And spoiler alert, it beats the Pixel 7a pretty consistently. There are a couple times where there are certain background details that are a little bit sharper on the Pixel 7a, but overall, all it came down to was me holding the phone a little bit more steady. Like I said, I'll detail that in a secondary video. Same with the telephoto lenses. I want to compare the telephoto lenses on here to the 1 Mark III. Now again, the 1 Mark III, look, I don't have a 1 Mark IV or 1 Mark V, so I can't compare to those. So the 1 Mark III is going to have to do, and the 1 Mark III is the phone that actually made me give a damn about telephoto lenses. S21 Ultra couldn't do it. I think the S21 Ultra has like one of the shittier telephoto lenses, if I'm gonna be completely honest. Like, people gassed it up because 100x space zoom and all this other crap, but if you put that even in lighting that you think it would be good in, it just doesn't perform. It just doesn't perform well. And I've shown you guys before how the One Mark III completely shat over it in taking a picture of my friend's lizard at the time, where the One Mark III actually looked like a photo that wasn't just usable but very good, and the the S21 Ultra's photo looked like it came out of an FMV game from the Sega CD. So it's like, it's insane to me that people gas that up solely based off of software manipulation, not the actual hardware run itself. Now, I'm not saying that software doesn't matter. Obviously it does. But when it's solely software that you're going off of when it comes to, taking pictures of the moon, it's, to me, that's not a big deal. You take a picture of the moon once or twice and then you're like, okay, that's cute. I'm more into how this sensor, how the telephoto sensor will work with things like, say macro shots or, flower portraits and stuff like that. That's what I give a damn about. Or even leaf portraits, since there's a bunch of leaves on the ground since it's fall. That's going to be something that's going to be pretty nice. And I'm going to have a more in-depth camera review talking about all this stuff and what I feel. But obviously the comparison between this and the One Mark III is what I'm really going to do when it comes to the telephotos. The ultra-wide, it's nice. I'm never really going to use it. It's kind of one of those sensors that after the LG first hurrah of them, I just kind of stopped using. They kind of become a novelty. But overall, I'm not really going to test those. I really give a damn about the other sensors more. But, whatever. That's neither here nor there, and it's not really that big of a deal. But, yeah, that's all I really got to say for now. 13 Ultra is fantastic, man. And if it wasn't for the fact that I can't use Google Pay, it would be the only phone I carry on me. It really would be. And that's kind of sad, man. It really is sad. And I'm not really into flashing flashing the Chinese ROM just so I can relock the bootloader and all this extra stuff. I don't really feel like doing all that. I'll just take it out as I can't use Google Pay on my very expensive phone, but whatever. Overall though, that's all I really gotta say. This is Sparta. Thanks for watching. Thanks for support. Hope you guys have a wonderful, what day is it? Saturday, whatever time of day it is in the area. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, share with people that are interested in the sort of content, and have a good one.